Let's go straight to Insider's host and our national political lead, David Speers, who broke that news about Philip Lowe and the decision on the RBA. David, what do you know? Good morning.
Yeah, morning, Lisa. Morning, Michael. Probably in some ways the worst kept secret. I don't think many were expecting Philip Lowe to be extended after 7 years as Reserve Bank Governor, with his position, that term coming up in September. But yes, we can confirm that announcement will come today. Cabinet is expected to meet a little later this morning to finalise all of this and make the final decision on Philip Lowe's replacement. But we're able to confirm this morning that, yes, Dr Lowe won't be extended. Look, worth noting, there have been 8 governors of the Reserve Bank in its 62, 63-year history. 5 of them have not had an extension of their term. So, yes, the last couple have. Glenn Stevens and Ian Macfarlane before him were extended for a 10-year tenure. But that's not been the norm over the longer history of the Reserve Bank, and that won't happen here with Philip Lowe. Look, we know Philip Lowe copped a lot of criticism coming out of COVID for giving that guidance that rates would likely remain on hold until 2024. A lot of borrowers went out, borrowed big with those record low interest rates. And then, of course, when inflation really started to spike, he had to start lifting rates much earlier. We've had 12 rate hikes in the space of 14 months. And that's seen a lot of criticism directed at Philip Lowe in particular. The Treasurer, though, yes, he holds Philip Lowe in very high regard. We've heard him say that multiple times, and particularly through the Reserve Bank review process, which can't have been easy for Philip Lowe. Look, he handled that all, with great professionalism, and I think Jim Chalmers certainly, as I say, holds him in very high regard as a result of all of that. So this can't have been an easy decision, but they have decided to replace him with who? We don't know yet, but someone who will be leading the Reserve Bank into that new era of reform, but also dealing with this unfinished business of bringing inflation down.
What do you make, David, of the opposition leader Peter Dutton putting down markers? He argues that the new RBA chief, clearly will be a new RBA chief, thanks to your exclusive this morning, should not be, in his view, somebody from the public service, somebody who has worked closely with government, by definition, as he would see it, ruling out people like the Treasury Secretary, Stephen Kennedy.
There's quite an unusual intervention, Michael. Bipartisanship is the norm and really critical when it comes to the Reserve Bank Governor. Think about it. You're talking about an independent role it's a critical role, someone who has to make really unpopular decisions. You need that bipartisan support around it, not to become a political football. But Peter Dutton yesterday, really building on what a number of his colleagues had been indicating, but declaring yesterday that in his view it cannot be someone who has been appointed by the Labor Party or indeed the coalition to a senior position within government. So that knocks out, in his view, the Treasury Secretary, Stephen Kennedy, the Finance Department Secretary, Jenny Wilkinson, both extremely highly regarded public servants. Stephen Kennedy appointed by the coalition to the position as Treasury Secretary. Jenny Wilkinson worked in Treasury through COVID, helping design a lot of the Morrison government's response to COVID. So both extremely professional and highly regarded public servants, but tainted, to use Peter Dutton's word, in terms of potentially taking up the Reserve Bank Governor position because they're too close to the workings of government. Look, the reality is it's a pretty shallow, narrow gene pool that we're talking about in potential candidates. It needs to be someone who has the experience, the economic expertise, the credibility in the markets and the public to carry out this task. They have to have the leadership skills, a proven track record. So you're not talking about a great number of people who could potentially take on this job. Stephen Kennedy, Jenny Wilkinson certainly could. The other candidate who is considered now the front runner is Michelle Bullock, the Deputy Governor at the Reserve Bank. If she does get the job, she'll become the first female Reserve Bank Governor in Australia's history. But that comment from Peter Dutton really was interesting and risked a break in the tradition of bipartisanship around the Reserve Bank Governor.
Well, we'll know in a matter of hours by the sounds of it. There's a by-election happening tomorrow. We haven't heard a lot about it. This is Fadden, of course. Is that because it's highly unlikely to change hands? It'll stay with the opposition?
Yes, everyone expects this seat will stay with the LNP. We're talking about LNP heartland here, the northern part of the Gold Coast in Queensland. There was a swing against them at last year's election, but they still held it with a margin of just over 10%. So neither side's expecting it to change hands. And look, that'll be a relief for Peter Dutton because it's a long time between drinks for the Liberal Party to have a win. Think about it. The state elections in Victoria, South Australia, New South Wales, federal election, the Aston by-election a few months ago. They need a win. What we'll be looking at tomorrow night is the swing. If there is a swing against Peter Dutton and against the LNP, that'll be a problem for him, clearly, because right now you've got a cost of living crisis. This is his home state, not far from his own seat, so we're talking about his own backyard. He's been campaigning very heavily on cost of living, but also some of the state issues, crime in particular, and urging voters to send a message to the Palaszczuk government. They're considered the two top issues, cost of living and crime, bunch of other issues as well. Labor's been trying to remind voters about the former member Stuart Robert and all the dramas around him, most recently the findings of the Robodebt Royal Commission. Both sides a little unclear. They say it's hard to detect how much impact that's had on the electorate over the last week or so. The Voice has come up a little bit, but only a little bit, say both sides, those that I've spoken to. So look, it'll be interesting to see if there is a swing one way or another, or whether it's basically a status quo result tomorrow night.
Finally, what's going to happen with Scott Morrison? Do you think there's been a lot of chatter this week about whether it's time for him to step away?
Yeah, it was interesting to see some of his colleagues take on his future this week, Lisa, after those Royal Commission findings that were particularly critical of Scott Morrison. Look, no one really knows, is the point. Maybe Scott Morrison is the only one who knows what he's going to do. I don't think anyone's expecting him to go under this situation, though, where he's seen to be forced out because of the findings of this Royal Commission. Surely wouldn't help his job prospects either outside Parliament. Most are expecting more likely towards the end of the year we'll see him go, but it's still a bit of a guessing game. Peter Dutton is showing him respect as a former PM, saying it's entirely up to him. David Littleproud, the Nationals leader, was a bit more blunt, saying if his heart's not in it, he should go. And then you've got people like the former Minister Karen Andrews saying he should definitely go. She's been saying that since the whole multiple ministries saga last year. So, yes, look, no one really cheering him on to stay in Parliament at the moment, put it that way.
David Speers, thank you. So we can expect to see the new RBA governor as the special guest on Insiders on Sunday?
I wish.